हो गया इंतजाम।
किसका?
गुड्डी की फीस का।
दिखा। 20,000 का लोन तुरंत। पता है कौन दे रहा है, ब्याज कितना है? लोन विनियमित संस्थानों से ही लें और कर्ज उतना जितनी जरूरत, वो भी जांच कर। हो गया इंतजाम। पगार एडवांस में भेजिए।
आरबीआई कहता है,
सही वित्तीय बर्ताव करे आपका बचाव।
जल्दी करो यार, प्लीज जल्दी।
दूसरा कोई मैच है क्या?
ऐसा ही कुछ है यार, बैंक जाना है दादाजी को लेके।
हाँ यार, उम्र होने पर कभी कभी मदद तो लगती है,
पर बैंकिंग में नहीं।
वैसे भी आरबीआई कहता है सीनियर सिटीजन सबसे पहले। अगर आप 70 साल से ऊपर हैं और आप बैंक नहीं जा सकते तो बैंक आएगा आपके पास जरूरी सेवाएं लेकर, वो भी वाजिब दरों पर।
सीनियर सबसे पहले। आरबीआई कहता है जानकार बनिए, सतर्क रहिए।
The changing world of news. Headlines that you wake up to. News that shapes your day. Stories that matter to you. The latest and most accurate updates. A fresh start to a new day. The Breakfast News, Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. on DD India. As the day unfolds and news and events take shape, we get you complete coverage of every news breaking in, tracking new developments as they happen. Midday Prime English, Monday to Friday, 2 p.m. on DD India.
Hello and welcome. Good to see you all after a break. Did you know that between 2014 and July 2021, over 41 artifacts were brought back to India, and on one single day in September 2021 alone, Prime Minister Narendra Modi brought back 157 artifacts from the United States, many of them as ancient as the 7th century and ranging from Vishnu to Buddha to Nataraj. Our focus on G20 today is on the role of culture in sustainable development and mainstreaming culture in global policy framework. With culture having the potential to be an instrument for soft power for furthering global cooperation and growth, we look at how collective frameworks, joint ventures and collaborations across G20 countries and beyond can address challenges in the cultural domain. All that and more on India at G20. I'm Manu Bhattacharya. First up, the top stories. First Business 20 conference under India's G20 presidency concludes in Imphal. Chief Minister of Manipur, N. Biren Singh, shares the state's investment opportunities as well as growing ease of doing business at the multilateral conference in Manipur. Over 100 delegates from 23 countries discuss opportunities for multilateral business partnership in ICT, tourism, healthcare and handlooms. Khajuraho, a popular tourist destination in the Indian heartland state of Madhya Pradesh, readies to host over 125 delegates from G20 member countries and beyond for the first G20 Culture Working Group meeting from 22nd to 25th February. Khajuraho rolls out a 50-day cleanliness campaign, Clean Khajuraho, Green Khajuraho. Various organizations, key city officials and public are participating in the campaign. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman and RBI Governor Shaktikant Das will jointly chair the first G20 meeting of finance ministers and central bank governors under India's G20 presidency in Bengaluru on 24th and 25th February, meeting to discuss a host of economic and financial challenges facing the world. As Khajuraho, a popular tourist destination in Madhya Pradesh, readies to host delegates from G20 member countries and beyond for the first G20 Culture Working Group meeting from 22nd to 25th February, here's a primer on what to expect from the meeting.
Tourist destination in the Indian heartland state of Madhya Pradesh and known for the immaculate sculptures of its temples, is all set to play host to over 125 delegates from G20 member countries and beyond. As the Ministry of Culture will organize the first G20 Culture Working Group meeting there from 22nd to 25th of February.
G20 is taking place against the backdrop of several global challenges. With the Culture Working Group, our commitment is to build consensus within the G20 community and highlight the concerns, especially of the Global South. The G20 under India's presidency hopes to catalyze the formulation of sustainable solutions to combat contemporary global problems across sectors.
In the run-up to the event, a 50-day cleanliness campaign, Clean Khajuraho, Green Khajuraho, got underway in the city. Various organizations, key city officials and public are participating in the campaign. A robust program of cultural projects inspired by India's G20 theme of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam awaits G20 delegates. It is worthwhile to note here that the Indian philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one earth, one family, one future, draws from the Maha Upanishad, an ancient Indian Sanskrit text that affirms the value of all life, human, animal and plant, and their interconnectedness on the planet Earth and in the wider universe. With its spirit rooted in the idea of inclusiveness, universal welfare and harmony among all beings, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is premised on the belief that all individuals are collectively responsible towards each other and their shared future. It aims to foster, celebrate and incorporate the diversity of cultural traditions amongst the member states while striving towards holistic living and creating a pro-people planet. So at the heart of India's G20 culture track is the idea of culture for life, an environmentally conscious lifestyle as a campaign for sustainable living.
The Culture Working Group of G20's Indian presidency promulgates the ideas of culture for life, which fosters an environmentally conscious lifestyle by firmly anchoring the role of culture in overall sustainable development. Our Culture Working Group will focus on facilitating dialogue among the G20 community to reach a consensus and ascertain much needed solutions on the 4 priority areas, which are protection and restitution of cultural property, harnessing living heritage for a sustainable future, promotion of cultural and creative industries and a creative economy, and leveraging digital technologies for the protection and promotion of culture.
India has identified 4 priority areas for Culture Working Group: protection and restitution of cultural property, harnessing living heritage for a sustainable future, promotion of cultural and creative industries and creative economy, and leveraging digital technologies for protection and promotion of culture. As a part of the meeting, there will be an exhibition titled Readdress Return of Treasures at the Maharaja Chhatrasal Convention Centre, which will be inaugurated by Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh Shivraj Singh Chauhan and Culture, Tourism and Donor Minister G. Kishan Reddy. Cultural programs will also be organized on the occasion, including the Khajuraho Dance Festival cultural performances. The delegates will also visit the Western Group of Temples, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. They will also be taken to Panna Tiger Reserve. The Culture Working Group will evolve through 4 meetings in 4 historic cities of India. After the first one in Khajuraho, the next 2 will be organized in Bhubaneswar and Hampi. while the location for the fourth meeting is yet to be decided. The theme for Khajuraho is protection and restitution of cultural property. The Culture Working Group will reflect the emergence of culture as a prominent theme on the global stage. It will adopt culture to renew multilateral and multicultural cooperation at all levels and inform future global cultural policies and initiatives. The working group has developed a robust year-long program of cultural projects such as exhibitions, immersive experiences, symposiums, seminars, art residencies, workshops, publications and more to take forward India's priorities in the cultural domain. Bureau Report, DD India.
An ancient city, Khajuraho is known for its majestic temples and elaborate sculptures. A UNESCO World Heritage Site, the Khajuraho group of monuments was constructed by the Chandela dynasty between 950 and 1050 AD. The aesthetics of the Nagara style architecture, ornamented with the intricate and detailed sculptures, acts like a window into the socio-cultural practices of the time. Here's a sneak peek into Khajuraho.
Khajuraho is an ancient city known for its magnificent temples and intricate sculptures. The city is located in the Chhatarpur district of Madhya Pradesh and holds spellbinding historical tales and architectural grandeurs. As per historical archives, the Khajuraho temple site had 85 temples during the 12th century, spread over 20 square kilometers. However, today, only 25 of these temples scattered throughout a 6 square kilometer area have survived the course of time. The temples are famous for their craftsmanship that consist of splendid demonstrations of fine sculptures and exceptional architectural skills, making them one of the most stunning UNESCO World Heritage Sites in India. The name Khajuraho is taken from the Hindi word khajur, meaning date palms. It is said once the city was surrounded by nothing but date palm trees, and hence it got its name. These world-famous Indian temples were built during the Chandela dynasty, and most temples were constructed between 950 and 1050 AD during the reigns of Hindu kings Yasovarman and Dhanga, Chandela ruler. Rather, building temples was a tradition of the Chandela rulers, followed by almost all rulers of the Chandela dynasty. Khajuraho temples were rediscovered in the 1850s after being neglected for centuries. Bureau Report, DD India.
And we have now put together for you 10 main challenges facing the culture sector. What are they? Let's show them to you. The culture sector is among the hardest hit by the COVID-19 pandemic, and hence in the post-pandemic period there's a lot to do going forward. There are growing threats to cultural heritage from conflict, from climate change, theft and illicit trafficking. So there are several challenges posed by these phenomena. Also, there's a need for adapting to digital transformation for equitable access. So if you are anywhere in any part of the world, you can get access to a particular cultural site if that is available digitally to you. There is a need for stronger synergies between culture and education to enable learners to develop new skills. Remember, this is a key focus in India's National Education Policy 2020 as well. There's a need to expand social and economic safety nets to cultural professionals, just like gig and platform economy workers are out of the purview of most of such protection. Similarly, cultural professionals also need that protection. There's a need for capacity building of officers in customs and other law enforcement agencies. In countering smuggling, there's a need to counter corruption that allows cultural artifacts to be smuggled and laundered. And hence there is a need for cooperation between countries, which G20 is a platform to take forward. There's a need to raise awareness on legal implications of infringing upon cultural heritage. There are various international conventions that are in place. There are domestic laws as well. There's a need for greater cooperation from internet service providers and digital vendors for better monitoring of compliance. So there needs to be greater cooperation at several levels. There's a need to dismantle operations of traffickers and bring them to justice as well. So these are the 10 broadly speaking challenges that are there in the cultural domain before the G20 delegates, and the meeting is set to take place of the Culture Working Group, the first one at that, in the next couple of days in Khajuraho city of Madhya Pradesh. Joining us for perspective are Dinesh Patnaik, former DG, Indian Council for Cultural Relations or ICCR, and Dr. Sandhya Purecha. She is the chairperson of Sangeet Natak Academy. Such a pleasure to have the two of you on India at G20. Mr. Patnaik, I'll begin with you. We've spoken about the challenges. There are several opportunities as well in the cultural domain. But why do you think it is important to mainstream culture in the global policy discourse?
To tell you, it's really a pleasure speaking to you from Spain. I was former Director General of ICCR, and now I'm the Ambassador of India in Spain. And Spain is a permanent invitee to the G20. But what I wanted to tell you is culture is a glue which is very important across the world, not just because of its social ramifications and cultural heritage that it portrays, but because it's an economic activity. You know, in India, we are a cultural powerhouse, like Spain is a cultural powerhouse in Europe and across the world. Spanish becoming the third largest spoken language in the world, and Spain also representing a huge cultural heritage here. But India itself is a cultural powerhouse. But what we haven't been able to do is monetize to make culture as an economic activity. For that, we are working on it. I think there's a lot we can do. We can learn from the rest of the world. And the G20 representing 85% of the world's economy and 85% of the world's population is the right forum for us to spread our culture, to learn from others, and to make sure that we can harness the cultural potential that we have in the country.
Fair enough. Dr. Sandhya, I'll come to you now. You've heard the 10 challenges that I have outlined. What is the biggest challenge in the culture domain to your mind? Because, for instance, we are aware that several jobs were lost, several cultural professionals took a hard hit because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Then there's a lack of a social and economic safety net for most of them. And there are several opportunities too going forward, digitalization being one. But I wouldn't put words into your mouth. What to your mind is the biggest challenge and the biggest opportunity that G20 countries can build upon in these meetings?
First of all, thank you very much for inviting. And secondly, the biggest challenge for us to bring back the original grassroots level artists back to their art forms and give them the economic and environmental sustainability so that they trust and they continue doing this cultural heritage and cultural seva, and to preserve and propagate they can really do the best. So this is the biggest challenge, that we need to bring them back and make them safe and make them more economically empowered.
Mr. Patnaik, is culture for life an innovative concept? We haven't heard this before. In fact, in 2020, G20 took up culture as a theme for the first time, and now we are saying that the first meeting, in fact, in all the 4 working group meetings of culture will be predicated on culture for life. Can you explain that to the viewers on what is the kind of linkage that is there between culture and leading a sustainably conscious lifestyle?
See, there are two things. First, like I told you about culture and economy. In fact, what Sandhya just replied, the reason we were faced with a challenge during the pandemic because we don't see culture as an economic activity. And what do you mean by economic activity? What I mean is we do not have policies to incentivize culture. For example, in all economic activity, whether it is steel, automobiles, any other, wherever it's seen as an economic sector, we have incentives. We support, we give tax incentives, we help people out, we know who are working in those sectors. Same with culture. We need to know who is working in the sector to be able to help them. And so we need to plan out and make culture into an economic sector. That's one part of it. The other, what we talked about, culture and lifestyle. Now, this is something which PM, inaugurated last year. The whole idea is that today, for climate change, to make the world sustainable, our lifestyles are important. We cannot maintain a lifestyle which is based on overconsumption, which is based on waste, which is based on actually using the earth's resources more than it can handle. So we need to have a lifestyle which can handle all this. And it's a cultural factor. Like for example, in the Indian culture, we save, we recycle. Kavadi wala abhi bhi, in the sense we use the kavadi a lot. We are somebody in which the sustainability is ensconced in our ethos. Now, how do we take it to the world? That was Prime Minister's vision, that we take the ethos of sustainability that we have in our cultural system to the world. So one of the things that we are going to discuss in this is how do you harness living heritage for a sustainable future? How do you say that your lifestyle, how do you make your lifestyle into a cultural powerhouse which can help the rest of the world learn how to be more sustainable? That is one of the things that we are going to do in the G20.
Okay. Now, Ms. Sandhya, there is a need to have a greater consciousness towards the environment, a point that you made, a point that Mr. Patnaik made. And perhaps it is thus important to have a greater integration between culture and education. India's national education policy seeks to do exactly that, but under the G20 forum, how can this idea be taken forward?
In the G20, we need to make the policy, the communique which we will be sending it through this cultural CWG group, which will be sending it the communique in which we will like that it should be a global policy should be made for the artists and artisans and their creativity and also the digitization, because there are so many art forms which are vanishing, especially from India, and if those are digitized and saved and uploaded so that the next generation can be aware of it. So I think for that the global policy needs to be made along with their lifestyle improvement, so that the insurance policy, the health policy of these artists and artisans and their works, and they should be provided with the market, the global market for the artisans. If that is also will improve the economic sector and the economic sustainability of the artists and artisans. So the global market needs, for that also the global policies need to be made, and I think this in G20 communicate, this can be a major points which can be communicated, and along with that the promotion of cultural and creative industry, the whole creative industries where the new ideas and new digitalized performances or digitalized presentations should be encouraged both nationally and globally. Again, the new policies needs to be created in this G20.
Right, let me take that forward, Mr. Patnaik. How do we adapt the culture sector in the G20 countries and the countries that comprise the global south to digital transformation? How do we use more digital means yet not depriving people who are physically involved in cultural jobs like cultural professionals, tourist guides, etc., of their earnings?
See, there are two parts to the digital transformation. One was what we saw during the pandemic, how digital platforms were used to spread culture. Culture did not stop during the pandemic. In fact, to a large extent, culture got more spread because of the pandemic, because we used online platforms, whether it is online platforms for films or online platform for spreading culture, literary festivals, dance, music, theater, etc. So that is one thing. That is the digital transformation gives a platform for the spread of culture across the world. It makes culture across the world accessible to everybody. Suddenly Indians could see Korean soap operas, Spanish films, Taiwanese programs, across the world. You could suddenly have access to all of it. That is one, which is to give a platform. The other is how do you leverage the digital technologies for protection and promotion of culture, which is how do you use digital technologies in the world. So for example, the big four, Microsoft, Google, etc., are working with the Indian Culture Ministry and others to map Indian culture heritage. How do you map them out? How do you put it together on a platform for everybody else to see? How do you use digital technologies to preserve our culture? And how do you promote it? So these are things which we are trying to do, but we also need to learn from the rest of the world. And the G20 is the best platform. We can bring together best practices and the best ways that we have done it from countries like Spain and other countries to learn from them as to how we can do it better. So for us, to start the process of people learning from each other and sharing best practices.
Right. I started the show by speaking about how Prime Minister Narendra Modi has brought so many artifacts from different countries, and a key focus area is restitution of India's cultural heritage and the cultural heritage of various G20 countries. Can G20 be that platform to create greater sensitivity and awareness on such an issue?
See, already that sensitivity has happened. These things that are being returned are not because we are getting them back in one way, but because those countries have understood that keeping stolen art is not the correct way of going about it. Of course, how do you define what is stolen? Something which was taken away forcibly, or with something which was taken away when you were occupying the country or the land, when you were the power which was the hegemonic power. Now, there are different things. I mean, if we start going back into that, that's a different matter. But there is a sensitivity today that culture needs to go back to its roots, to go back to from where it came from. So restitution of cultural property is one. But the other thing is, how do you maintain the culture that you have? How do you protect your cultural property? Today we are seeing across the world with modern day development, not only are we destroying the environment, but we are also destroying our historical legacy, our cultural legacy. And that we need to preserve. And this is not just monuments. This is also intangible cultural heritage. Your dance, your music, your literature, your theatre, all the intangible things. Languages are being lost. Ways of protecting ecosystems are being lost. So in a way, Prime Minister's initiative to do life, which is the lifestyle thing, is how do you use cultural lifestyle? How do you protect cultural lifestyle? How do you protect our way of thinking? The whole Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. If the world is one family, we all need to work together to protect our common heritage.
Absolutely. It is important to protect and preserve tangible as well as intangible forms of cultural heritage of G20 countries and members of the Global South, of which India is a strong voice. Thank you so much, Mr. Patnaik and Dr. Sandhya, for joining us with your views on India at G20. Let's move on now. The first of the four B20 or Business 20 conferences of the G20 Dialogue Forum for the global business community concluded in Imphal, Manipur on Sunday. Over 100 delegates from 23 countries participated in the three-day Imphal event. The three-day meeting discussed opportunities for multilateral business partnership in ICT, tourism, healthcare and handlooms. Representatives of G20 and other countries also addressed the plenary session on the day one of the three-day event. The Imphal event was the first B20 conference part of India's G20 presidency, and the second one will be held in Aizawl in Mizoram from 1st to 3rd March, the next one in Sikkim's capital Gangtok from 15th to 17th March, and the fourth conference will be held in Kohima in Nagaland from 4th to 6th April. The first G20 meeting of finance ministers and central bank governors under India's G20 presidency will be held on the 24th and 25th of February in Bengaluru, Karnataka. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman and RBI Governor Shaktikant Das will jointly chair the meeting. It will see the participation of finance ministers and central bank governors of the G20 members, invitee members and heads of international organizations. 72 delegations will attend the meeting.
G20 finance ministers and central bank governors FMCBG meeting under the G20 Indian presidency is scheduled during 24th and 25th February 2023 in Bengaluru, Karnataka. Honorable Finance Minister of India and Governor RBI will jointly chair this meeting. The G20 FMCBG meeting will be preceded by a meeting of Finance and Central Bank Deputies FCBD on 22nd February and that meeting will be co-chaired by Secretary Economic Affairs, Government of India, and Deputy Governor RBI. Honorable Minister for Information and Broadcasting and Youth Affairs and Sports, Government of India, Shri Anurag Thakur, will inaugurate the G20 FCBD meeting.
That was Ajay Seth, Secretary, Department of Economic Affairs, telling us about the upcoming meeting which will be discussing global economic and financial challenges. That's it then in this edition of India at G20. Thanks for watching.
Get in-depth analysis of the important news of the day. Spotlight on day's newsmakers. Expert comments to dissect the news. Get the finer points of the matter. Watch Dateline 5 p.m. on weekdays on DD India.
जल्दी टिफिन पैक करो। राजू, मोबाइल छोड़ो।
अरे दीदी वो बैंक का नंबर चाहिए, रिफंड ही नहीं आया है। मिल गया। अब भी कॉल करता हूँ दीदी।
बिना नंबर जांचे? अक्सर जालसाज बैंक की नकली वेबसाइट और फर्जी